Going from horror movies, I have to segue into what makes the most sense, which is Disney's Frozen Spectacular. Welcome to the Real Appreciation Podcast. I am David Clair-Bennett, and with me today is a composer and orchestrator whose work can be found in movies like the 2013 Channing Tatum starring film White House Down. He also arranges music for Disney World Florida's live Frozen Spectacular. His next movie, I'll Play Mother, is now available. Please welcome to the show, Adam Langston.
Hello, David. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, firstly, I want to say that I think it is very cool how you worked on the Oscar-winning movie Les Mis. Can you walk us through what you did for that film in particular and what that process looked like for you?
Yes, I can. It was because it was a few years ago now, so let me cast my mind back. It was very exciting. I mean, it was what they needed from me, and what all I did really on that film was the music for the end credits, end titles, and then the end credit roller. But there was still a lot of feedback, a lot of notes and things on that, because, as you know, kind of every aspect of a film sometimes is important and will potentially get notes. And what it looked like was. I have met such great memories of it. I mean, I remember first going to Air Studios where they were recording some of the score for the film. In fact, some of the music, and they were doing On My Own, which was sung by Samantha Barks amazingly, and it was shot incredibly. And before this, I hadn't seen a musical that kind of looked like that or felt like that before. And so I was sitting in Air, and I heard this. I heard the music and saw it with the picture, and it was incredible. And I noticed Tom Hooper, the director, giving quite specific musical feedback right there about how many players he wanted on this. If it was feeling too big, he would ask for half the players, even playing techniques that they would use. And I noticed the level of detail that was going into it, which I suppose is to be expected on a musical, especially. And after that, I remember meeting with the musical director, Stephen, and the orchestrators, Stephen Brooker, and Anne Dudley, the composer or the arranger on that. There's lots of great people, and we went through. Yes, we went through a structure of what the music should be for this role, for the credits and the roller. Certain things that should happen where, and I must have got to work after that. Yeah, and I must have been provided with lots of the sheet music as well of the musical too, so that I had that as well to reference. Yeah.
How does that look like? Do you get a call? Do you get an email? You get a text?
That came from Becky Bentham, who was the music supervisor on the film, who I'd known then for quite a few years. I think this was 2012 when this happened, or around, I think. So I would have known her for a good 6 or 7 years, I think, before then. So I'd worked with her before, as I say, it's quite a few years ago, but she would have called or emailed, probably said, "Can you come in and have a chat about this?" That part of it has gone from my memory slightly. How it started, I don't remember. I just remember going to, as I say, Abbey Road as well. Seeing Anne work. Seeing Jonathan Allen was the recording engineer, so he was doing an amazing job. But yeah, I'm trying to answer your question. Well, what did it look like? It was like anything, you get asked and you just say yes straight away, and then maybe you figure out exactly what you're doing.
Well, another major project you were a part of was the 2013 blockbuster film starring Jamie Foxx and Channing Tatum, White House Down, which I love that movie. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. But I also love the score that's involved with the film itself. So again, I'm going to talk about how did that opportunity come about for you? I know it's around the same time frame, so the memory might not be as sharp, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that was slightly after. I do remember Now here's an interesting thing with Les Mis. For some, I went to LA actually on a different, just on a sort of a business trip with another composer. It was around the time of the Oscars, and they were I'm sure they were playing the music from speakers. Anyway, we were there. We were in LA, and I actually saw around that time. I think I saw a trailer for Olympus Has Fallen, which looked really similar.
Right.
Which was quite interesting. For a minute, I thought, "Hang on, is that the movie we were going to do?" But of course, it wasn't. But it was one of those times when two similar films come out, which has certainly happened before, hasn't it? So what did it look like? Well, I was working with James Brett, another fantastic composer, orchestrator, conductor, and we'd worked with Harold Closer, composer, on a few films before that. There was 10,000 BC. There was 2012. There was Anonymous, which was another. These are all Roland Emmerich films, by the way. So Anonymous was the one which was about Shakespeare and who was writing his plays. So it was an outlier because it was not a sort of action adventure film, and the score was very different as well. But it came about again. I suppose it's an email or a call saying, it's a film to work on. Are you available? So you say yes. And then I remember it was an enormous orchestra. Maybe that was the largest orchestra they'd used. It was over 100 players, I think. So that's the thing I remember. And yeah, and then you a lot of it is you sit down in your room and you actually do the work. You get the music from the composer, and you figure out how that's going to work to being played by the orchestra.
What does your mindset look like when you get a call, a text, an email, whatever it is, about composing a score?
Oh yeah, that's just phenomenally exciting. I mean, you feel very honored, really, if someone wants to entrust their film or their music, if it's a composer, but their film, to compose music for their film is it's a big deal. And so I think you immediately start, if you have an inkling of what the film's about, immediately I'll start thinking about ideas. Go for a walk, imagine ideas. It's always nice at the beginning of a project to think about coming up with ideas and things, because there are no there's no sort of restrictions or boundaries at that point. You're kind of, it's a very nice sort of free thinking sort of exercise maybe. But how did you word that question, David? So what
is your process when it comes to whenever you get the message, hey, I would like you to compose the score for my film, TV show, whatever it is?
And another part of the process is to make sure you want to free up plenty of time, if you can, to do it, because this is probably going to be very important to you. So yeah, you want to clear some time or find out what their schedule is. But even that's a little bit later. I think the first thing to do is to be very appreciative and just tell them you're excited about it, and ask them what they imagine for the score, because ultimately it's of course the director's film, and you're gonna provide whatever they feel the film, whatever they want, whatever the film needs. So yeah, there's a few things, but it's before you're like writing the music, there's those things to think about, and sort of establish things like that. But that's all. You want to start probably making a note of your ideas straight away, because it's those initial ideas can actually be really useful. I think because when an audience watches a film, it's obviously the first time they've seen it, and so your score, I don't know, there's something about the first time you hear about the film and the ideas you get then might be quite good, because that's, in a way, you're kind of experiencing the film sort of, or the film as an audience would. You hear about it and you kind of react to it right away. But ultimately, of course, you look at the edit and you're gonna refine your ideas at that point. But those initial sparks can be useful, I think. Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about your latest film that you scored. It is the horror movie I'll Play Mother, and you and I were talking off camera. I love horror movies. I love psychological thrillers, and I was grateful to have gotten to see this early screener of the film, and I absolutely loved it. But what I also loved was your score, and I truly mean that, man, because well, while we've talked about how you've worked with action movies like White House Down to a completely different genre with Les Mis, how does scoring horror compare to scoring those more mainstream types of genres?
It will depend on the film, but really you still want to think of an idea, a musical idea, which you can carry with you and which resonates with you. So it's probably going to be an emotional idea, or there's certainly going to be an emotional component to it, because horror films have intense emotions, don't they?
Right.
And this film, also being about a family, and about a pair of children who are bereaved and then adopted, there are certain specifics which do sort of influence what you think of, I think. Because if you were just told it's a horror film, then you might imagine a certain type of very dissonant music, or I don't know. I think you need something to grab onto, hook onto, really, an idea. But yeah, they're not. It's not going to be as mainstream usually as those other films you talked about. But in the case of this one, as you say, it's a psychological thriller as well, a kind of drama in there as well. So the music wasn't going to be just sort of purely dissonant horror music. So in that sense, it wasn't quite as different. It's not an experimental score or something like that.
Right.
So in a way, it does bear some similarities to those other films. It still has, it's still kind of orchestral music, and its themes, and its there are character arcs and things like that. So yeah, I mean, not as much as it could have been the case, I would say, because also Brad, the director, was, as I say, not looking for experimental music particularly in this. It was more dramatic and psychological type of music.
Going from horror movies, I have to segue into what makes the most sense, which is Disney's Frozen Spectacular, which is beloved by fans of all ages. What were the key challenges and joys you have in particular when it comes to arranging music for a live performance, but that also has to stay true to those Frozen films themselves?
I think it's quite important, certainly helpful, to be a fan of the music, to like that music, to love that music. And because then you understand what the fans of the super fans of the film, you're going to be a little bit more on their wavelength. And yeah, you do know that you have to keep the essence of it. I mean, the essence of it is going to be there because you're not changing melodies or anything like that. It needs to be obviously completely recognizable. It's just really, I suppose, the choreography of what's happening sometimes, when there's fireworks going off, when this or that's happening, when this character's doing something. But yeah, it's really keeping the essence of it, but in a way you can expand it a little bit, because it's a big kind of spectacular. There's a big castle in front of you, and there's fireworks, as I say, and it's a big show, so it's kind of even more theatrical. So it's slightly different because you're not in the film and watching the story where you've been with Elsa and she's now singing this song. It's slightly different than that because everyone already knows the song, so it's more of a show piece. It's more of a theatrical performance of it, I guess. So you can, in a way, it can be. You can go a little bit bigger with it, with the accompaniment, because it's kind of I think that's right. Yeah, it's a kind of just a slightly bigger performance in a way.
This show's all about gratitude as well as appreciation, and truly one of the most important things I do in my life. Every day when I wake up and before I go to bed, I say 3 things that I'm grateful for. So Adam, what are 3 things that you're grateful for in your life right now?
I'm grateful for, certainly from a work side of things, I'm grateful for, the directors that I work with, who, want me to work on music with them, and the composers as well who I work with. So I'm very grateful for that because, as I say, it's it really feels it's a very special thing to do. Collaborating with a director on something they've worked so hard on and so long on, is it's a great sense of responsibility, and it's a really good feeling. So that's one. And then I'm grateful for obviously my family and friends, who play a massive part in my life, and I'm grateful for like the path which has sort of led me here, I suppose. Which you can trace all the way back to my childhood and learning music and things like that, and just it feels very lucky to have gone on this path and sort of be where I am, because it's easy to think back and think if you'd made slightly different decisions at any time, you could be actually in a very different place. So I'm grateful for the path that I've been on and hopefully continue on as well.
So hey, I cannot thank you enough for doing this, man. And thank you guys so much for listening to this and joining us today. Make sure to subscribe or tap the follow button wherever you get your podcast. And I'm David Clair-Bennett. Until next time, take care, love yourself, protect your mental health. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of Real Appreciation.